Hi everyone. This is going to be a video about some books that I'm thinking of reading for this month, this upcoming month of October. So this is going to be kind of like a semi-TBR or hopefully to be read this month. And I'll just kind of give an idea of what each book is about and why I'm excited to read it. So all of these books are from my library. The Sacramento Public Libraries just have a lot of these books that I would prefer not to have to pay money for if I'm just gonna read it one time, especially if it's like a thriller. So that's why these are all books from the library. So I'm gonna start with the one that I was actually most anticipating, but I don't know if I'm actually anticipating it as much as I thought I was going to, because I'll be honest, I actually didn't read anything about what it was about. Ooh. Guys, stop fighting. Sorry, my cats were fighting, so I'm breaking it up. What was I saying? Oh yeah, I didn't know actually what the synopsis was about until I literally just read it like 20 minutes ago. But I just heard really good things about it from a lot of booktubers that I watch. But it's called Wrong Place, Wrong Time, and this is by Gillian McAllister. I believe she's written she, I believe. Maybe it's a different pronoun. I think it's a she. But yeah, she's written other thrillers, I believe, and I haven't heard a lot about her, but I just hear really good things about this, and so I'm really excited. It's basically about this, I think it's a father or mother who witnessed like their 17-year-old son, who's seemingly innocent, never has done anything bad, suddenly has committed an atrocious crime. He's shot somebody outside, and the parent is just trying to figure out, why would my son do something like this? And so I think it's just him trying to figure out what the objective of the teenage son was. But yeah, so when I read it, it just sounded kind of not interesting, if I'm being honest. I feel like thrillers have always been a hit or miss for me, and so that's actually why I feel like I ended up straying away from thrillers and gravitating more towards horror books, because, or at least thriller with horror elements, because for some reason those just seem to be more thrilling to me than a lot of thrillers are, especially domestic thrillers. So yeah. The next book that I'm probably second most interested in, this one I'm also sort of intimidated by, is Riley Sager's, I believe this is his recent book, The Only One Left. I actually read his other book, The House Across the Lake, like, I think I finished it 2 weeks ago, and literally up until, I want to say, the last third, I liked it, and then I hated it, because he just did something different from his other books that kind of pissed me off, because I was like, you never did it, and then you finally do something like this. And it's just kind of like, it almost felt a bit like it almost felt like he went out of his typical formula, I guess, but it almost felt a bit cheap. I don't want to say anything else, because this isn't even about that book, but let's just say I was very disappointed with it, and I've never been a huge Riley Sager fan. I'm not saying he's a bad author, I just don't personally like him. But, I don't personally like a lot of his works. I think they're just okay, at best. But I'm hoping this one's better, because I read the synopsis and it actually sounds really interesting. It sounds more interesting than any of his others. So this is about an elder woman who, I guess when she was much younger, she actually ended up killing, or allegedly some people feel like she killed her sister. And I think that they never really had concrete proof, so she kind of got away with it, or allegedly got away with it. And so years later, I think she gets some kind of health or caretaker who is supposed to take care of her at this rundown manor that she's been living in still her whole life. And I guess she's she suddenly tells the caretaker, I'm going to tell you my life story. I'm going to admit to you what really actually happened, and we don't know anything past that. So that just really interests me because I really enjoy books with unreliable narrators when done right, when the unreliable narration is actually genuinely interesting. I just hope it's not super, because this is something that I feel like is a huge reason for why I tend not to gravitate towards thrillers as much anymore, is that I feel like a lot of the time it's more telling and not showing. So I really hope that's not it, especially because, you know, this is supposed to be, it sounds like it's trying to be some sort of confessionary story where this woman is telling things. I could be wrong. Again, like, I kind of briefly read through each synopsis, so, but that's what I got from it, and so I just hope that it does do something different, and that it does at least provide some shock to me while I'm reading it. Okay, this third book, yeah, I'm just kind of going in order of like my most intriguing reads that I want to read, hopefully. But this one is Dark Corners, the author of, oh my god, I'm forgetting her name, or her title. The author of The Night Swim, which is Rachel, or no, not Rachel, Megan Golden? Yeah, Megan Golden. And I really liked that book. It was supposed to be more of a, what's the word I'm thinking of? It's on the tip of my tongue. It was supposed to be kind of like a court case sort of thriller. I'm forgetting the word for it. Oh my gosh. But I think anyone who knows this author's previous work, you know what I'm talking about. Like, it has a court case scene that's pretty drawn out in the story, and so that's why it was kind of daunting to a lot of readers. But surprisingly, it was actually very quick paced. It wasn't that slow. I do think that it's one of those things where if you deeply care about the sort of issues that this type of work is commenting on, it won't feel slow. But just note, I will say I don't think I loved it as much as other people did. I loved it, or I liked it more because it touched on issues that I do think are very important to talk about. And it wasn't necessarily super slow, but to me it just wasn't super thrilling either. It was just interesting and a good read. So, but Dark Corners is actually, I believe, supposed to include the same main character. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the main character had the same name. It's like a detective of some sort, but the synopsis says that this person named Terrence Bailey, he's actually going to be released from prison for breaking and entering, but the law enforcement believes that he's guilty of more than just that. They believe he's guilty for the murders of 6 girls, and I guess what ends up happening was this random acquaintance happened where a supposedly pretty big YouTube influencer, or some kind of influencer, I think, social media influencer, ends up meeting with him, and then she's found dead or missing, something like that, like pretty soon after. And the cops are like, well, that's funny, and that's when the FBI agent gets involved too. So that just sounds pretty interesting. I actually would say this actually sounds more interesting personally to me than the Night Swim. Again, I think Night Swim is deserving of the praise it gets. I just don't necessarily think it was that thrilling. I think it was just a really good book, and that's it. And then I want to say, you know, honestly, this is more of like, this one that's last is going to be a graphic novel. That's literally the only reason why it's last, honestly. So the final, like, regular novel is called Whaleful, and I don't know too much about it, but it's more sci-fi. You can kind of just tell based on the cover, because it has a whale and a person going into the, or is he driving, is he swimming away? I don't know. But either version would work based on the synopsis, because what ends up happening is this boy named Jay Gardner wants to, I guess, come back for his father in the ocean. Yes, it says here he wants to find the remains of his deceased father in the Pacific Ocean of the beach. And I think that it just has to do with the fact that he feels guilty for some reason about his father's suicide, his father's death. It was not caused by a whale or a creature or anything. I guess that's the story, but here it says that he ends up falling into the prey of like a giant squid and then later by a sperm whale. So he gets caught in this sort of nature trap and has to survive. So it's a survival sort of sci-fi. And so that's why, well, is that even sci-fi actually? I guess that's not sci-fi. I don't know why, but when I think of horror, aquatic horror, I associate with sci-fi. That's not sci-fi, is it? I'm sorry. But you know what I'm talking about. It's not, it's more of a very specific type of horror. So survival horror, I guess, is what I should call it. But I am intrigued, so I'm hoping to give that a shot. And then finally is the graphic novel. Now I planned on picking this up because there's supposed to be a book club at my library based on it, like some kind of online book club. And so on a whim, I put it on hold at my library because I haven't really been reading as much as I'd like to in general. And so I feel like graphic novels would be a good way to alleviate some of that. So I got Night Eaters, The Night Eaters. This is a graphic novel about two twins, Billy and Millie. They're Chinese American and they're having a lot of personal issues. I think they have a financial issue with keeping their restaurant to continue running as a business. And I guess their parents are offering their help, but I guess what's going on is because of generational values that are different from each other, their parents sort of don't know if they're giving too much help to their kids. And it just sounds like this is an interesting take on explaining how the things that go on in a family's household that are kind of hush-hush can be horrific in themselves, and that due to like personal and generational issues between family members, like things can get not great. I don't know, it doesn't even sound necessarily scary, but the blurb underneath said, where was it? No, it wasn't here. I remember reading some kind of quote that just made it sound really interesting to me. That was the sort of thing that kind of caught my attention, but it said something around the lines of sometimes your family is the scariest thing in your life. Like it said something around those lines. And I just thought to myself, like, wow, that can be so true. And I feel like that touches kind of on psychological horror, which is honestly probably my favorite type of horror, because it sort of eats at you in a different way than other horror does. Because it eats at your mind, it makes you think, or at least tries to force you to think. But yeah, I like too that this is sort of blending in with like multicultural horror. I really hate saying that because honestly, well, actually no, I think it is fair to say this, because being a minority in a book shouldn't just automatically label it as multicultural horror, because why? That's not the only thing that, characters of color should be identified with, right? There's a lot of other things that go into the character other than their ethnicity or nationality. And even though we want to diversify our books, it doesn't have to be forced to be talked about as much as like other elements of the book, if that makes sense. If that's the author's intention, But anyways, yeah, I think this would be considered multicultural because it literally is talking about like these kind of values And so I think that personally for me, as being half Asian American, I think that this sounds really interesting, and so I'd like to give it a shot. And also the art is just really cool, actually. If you take a look, this is what the front of it looks. So yeah, I'm very intrigued. That's pretty much it. I hope that, some of these books sound interesting to some of you. Let me know if any of these books are books that you've heard of before, that you are thinking of reading or picking up. Let me know if there's a book here that you didn't know about that you actually got excited to hear about. But thank you for watching.